Welcome to the Real People, Real Business Show, where we're talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their business and is here to share their experiences, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you can be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Christina Lenkowski. Christina is a forward-thinking publicity strategist and educator for entrepreneurs, speakers, and authors looking to expand their credibility and go from best-kept secret to go-to expert in their industries. After 13 years working in the PR realm, Christina discovered what being a guest on podcasts did for her online-based business. Since then, she's dedicated her work to helping other business owners see the same kind of results. I love this because I love podcasting. Welcome to the show, Christina, and thanks so much for taking the time to share your story today.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm so excited to be on here, talking to your audience, talking about my story and just helping them learn all about what podcasts, have done for me in my business and what maybe they can do in their business too.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I discovered podcasting and discovered my, being an expert on podcasts and how much I love it. And honestly, if that was my only marketing strategy, I would be super, super happy. So tell me a little bit about kind of your journey. Tell us how we got here.
How did we get to this magical place of where I am right now? But yes, I would basically, how I like to start my story is that my mom was right. And what I mean by that is that when I was growing up, my mom was the director of this big nonprofit in Oregon, which is where I'm from. And she said, I really think that you're going to work in PR one day. And I was like, Mom, you don't even know me. Like, you don't get it. Like, I'm going to work in journalism. Like, I'm going to be a journalist. Everyone knows it. Like, I'm a writer, blah, blah, blah. Went to school for journalism, was editor of the paper, all this stuff. And as you may already know, just even from hearing me already, I am an extrovert. I love to talk to people, be around people. That's where I definitely get a lot of energy from. Like, COVID was like my nightmare, like having to be in my house all by myself. I guess I had my family, but whatever, but besides them, all by myself and not able to be around other folks. And so when I was done with college, I went and traveled around the world for a little over a year. And I came back home and I was lucky enough to be offered two positions. And one was as a copy editor for a paper in Oregon. And the other one was as in the publicity department for a large comics publisher in Portland. And I thought about it and I really thought about me and what I would want. And I ended up taking the publicity job so that I could be around other people, go to events. Like, I got to go work at Comic-Con and do all these really cool things. And that's really what set me on that PR journey. And my mom was absolutely right, because PR was the perfect mix for me of being able to write, but then also being able to be social and be out at events and be just out in front of people. And so I start that out with my mom was right, because she absolutely was. And that was the journey that I took. And so that's why I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll just see how this goes. All right. Well, I will continue on about my journey.
All right. So I love the story, the mom thing.
Mom.
Okay.
The real message at the end is that moms are always right. What I did is, after working for PR agencies for about 13 years, after I had my daughter, I was like, all right, I'm ready to go off on my own. I don't want to be a senior account exec at an agency anymore. And so I did. I went off on my own. I started to freelance. And I did what probably some of your listeners did. And that is, I decided to create my own online course. And so I was like, perfect. I'm going to create a course on tourism, public relations, tourism, PR. That's what my area of expertise is. And so I did that. I spent all this time, created this course, did all this. And even though my course was about publicity, you guys, my course was about publicity. When it came to launching, I did no publicity because, and I'll tell you my reason why, is because all the people that I was learning how to do courses from didn't talk about publicity as a way to market their course or a way to market their business or anything like that. So I was like, oh, well, this must, these people know what they're doing. Like, they've made 7 figures from doing this. Like, they obviously know like what they're doing. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to focus on the ads, and I'm going to focus on, getting out on social media and stuff like that. And well, I did all that, and it was an absolute failure. Like, I spent so much money, so much time, only had a couple people join my course. And so the next time that I went to launch it, I was like, okay, this time I'm doing it my way. And so I started getting myself booked on podcasts, started getting myself out there, and the difference in my launch was night and day. I had people actually seeking me out, people asking if they could hire me one-on-one. It just was a completely different ball game because people were hearing me on podcasts and they were connecting, right? They were connecting with what I had to say. They liked who I was, they liked my personality. So they were reaching out to me to ask about how they could work with me, or better yet, they were just going and buying. Like I would just suddenly have, a sale and I would be like, wait, what? Who's that person even, where they even come from? And realize that they'd come from a podcast that I had been on. And so this was all happening. And I kind of started to think about, all right, I feel like people need to understand what publicity is, what they can be doing in their business with it, et cetera, et cetera. And COVID hit. So when COVID hit, I was still working in that tourism PR industry. And as you can imagine, tourism went away. When COVID hit, tourism was gone. And so I had already been thinking I was going to do this pivot, but that just absolutely pushed me right into being like, all right, now I'm going to start talking about podcasting and how other people, particularly women, can get out there on podcasts and spread the word about their own businesses. And so I started teaching how to do that. I had live master classes. Those were great. They were really fun. I loved doing that. But eventually I had enough people just ask me, so could you just do it? That I started to provide as a service to do the pitching. And that's where our business has grown to where it is now. And the agency that we have now, pitching all kinds of clients out to get on aligned podcasts. And we absolutely love it. But really my goal is to help what I call traditionally underrepresented entrepreneurs. So that's women, LGBTQIA, and members of the BIPOC community get their voices out onto the airwaves because people need to hear their stories.
I love this because when I teach my clients in my courses how to do marketing that feels much better for them, we kind of look at marketing with two sides, right? There's kind of like your creative work, your content that you create, that's where a lot of people stay because it's safe. Right. This is the Instagram posts and if I just keep making blog posts, and
yes,
there's a strategy around that for sure. But that is more brand strengthening, right? Like that is what's going to get people to know you once they find you, but they have to find you. And so the other side of that is what I call visibility, which is really the same thing, right? Like it's all the different places that you can show up and borrow other people's audiences to bring them into your sphere where they then can get to know you even better. And what I love about what you're kind of preaching is that you start with a medium where someone is going to have the best chance of getting to know you. And I think podcasts are really that, because you get to be dynamic and active and have a conversation. And, imagine a client sort of checking you out and hearing you speak, and they already have a sense of what it's going to be like to work with you, right? So I love that this is your focus, because it is the challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, because it feels scary. It feels uncomfortable. It's the side of marketing that people don't want to do.
They don't. They just want it to happen. They just want it to happen naturally. They're like, no, I think if I just do all this other stuff enough, something will go viral or whatever, and it'll just happen. But that's not really the way that it works. Just like you said, you have to put yourself out there. And my kind of advice to people that are in that mindset is, a lot of times they're thinking about the worst thing that could happen, right? Like I stumble over my words, or someone sees something and they don't like what they see, or who am I to be doing whatever. And the thing that I always like to say to that is, truly, in my mind, the worst that can happen is you don't put yourself out there, because you will not get in front of new people. You will not get that voice out there and make that connection with a new potential customer.
I don't know if you've ever read The Power of Moments, but it's a really great book. And
no, I haven't.
And what they talk about is that the best opportunity to create connection with your clients is when you fuck up. Right. Mm-hmm. And when you have something that's a little off, to the point where some of these CEOs were looking at the data and they were saying, let's intentionally fuck up, because then we're creating opportunities for us to delight our customers.
Right.
And so it's kind of the same thing. Like,
Mhm.
I don't care if I show up on a podcast and I say something funny or my hair is off or whatever, I'm
Yeah.
human. I'm human, and that makes me relatable. So it's almost an
Yes.
asset to be a
Mhm.
little off, right?
Yep.
Is that true?
100%. That is exactly true. I mean, I'm going to stumble over words on this interview. I'm going to ramble for too long on something, guaranteed. There's no question about it.
I've probably
So,
offended 8 people already. So
yeah, I mean, between the two of us, there's 10 people that have ripped their AirPods out in disgust already. It absolutely is going to happen, but that is what is real. That is what people relate to. And that is why I get DMs from people that hear me on a podcast, or my clients, when someone hears them on a podcast, because they related to something that they had to say.
Right. And some people won't, and that's fine, right?
Yes. Yep.
So how do we break down this resistance to doing the publicity? Like, you're in a good position, because I think a lot of people want to just pay someone and say, just do it for me, because this is hard, right? What if I have rejected? What if I'm rejected? Or what if someone doesn't, what if I put out all these pitches and I hear nothing back? So puts you in a good position, but how do we get people past the resistance that they have to these visibility activities, to all of the publicity and PR?
Sure. It's a great question. And I think that the first thing you need to realize is you are going to get rejected. And I think that it's important to recognize that will happen, and understand that it has nothing to do with you. And I think that that's really, really, really a big thing for people to understand. Like, look, I wish that all the pitches I send out for my clients got accepted. That would be freaking amazing. But unfortunately, that is not the way that it works. And we might hear a no, or we might not hear anything at all, but we can't take that personally. And the reason for that is because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There are a lot of podcast hosts out there that they're booked 6 months out. They're booked 9 months out. They don't have the space to have someone else come on their show. So it's not that they don't like what you had to say. It's just that they really don't, quite frankly, have the room. And beyond that, they might have also, if you're like, well, yeah, that's true, but they haven't spoken about this really important topic yet that I think their audience would find super valuable. That's great to pitch them on something like that. But here's the thing. You don't know if they just had Sam, whomever, come on and talk about that same thing. It just hasn't aired yet. So there are things out there that you just don't know. And so you can't take everything to heart, or feel like it's a rejection, or they ghosted me because I didn't like what I had to say, something like that. Podcast hosts are human too. They're just trying to do this work, trying to get the best content that they possibly can out to their audience. And so I think a huge part of getting over that mind block of worrying about rejection is knowing you will get rejected. But along with getting rejected, you will get yeses, and you will get the opportunity to get out in front of your audience.
And it's a numbers game, right?
It is.
We have to remember that. I think a lot of people go into marketing activities and they think, I need to track my ROI on all of these things. And I actually tell them not to. Because,
yes, good. I'm glad. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, because it's more about how consistent have you been. And that is the key, is like divorcing yourself from judging the value of your marketing activities on how many results you got right away, because we get scared and we want to, and then those numbers give us an excuse to back away. Oh, it's not a good business decision. But the thing is most of our clients come from our communities where we're known, right?
Yes.
Where we become known. And borrowing someone else's audience, whether it's a podcast or whether it's a webinar that you do together, or whether it's something else, you're automatically going in with credibility.
Yes, 100%.
And every time I do it, my list increases by a number that I couldn't get just from putting out a piece of content, right?
And they're better leads. They're warmer leads. Yeah,
they are, for sure, and they usually convert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
go ahead. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to say, so there's a perception that only extroverts are going to be good at PR, and I also call bullshit on that.
Yes, that's absolute bullshit. Yes. Before I get into why that's bullshit, though, I wanted to mention or just hop on one thing that you just said, which had to do with the kind of the ROI, or that being such like a big thing that people like to track or things like that. That's one thing that's notoriously hard to track with publicity work. We don't necessarily have a specific dollar amount that you can necessarily say was attributed to, you being on X podcast episode or this or that. But how I like to look at publicity is, have you ever read Atomic Habits by James Clear?
It's one of my favorite books.
Such a great book, such a good book. But you know how he talks about how ice, right, freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius based on where you are in the world, but before ice freezes, all this stuff is happening under the surface. And that is absolutely how I look at publicity. Mm-hmm. So before you kind of hit this tipping point of like, you are the expert in your industry on XYZ, or you're one of the experts in your industry on XYZ, you are doing all these things underneath where people are finding you. They're opening up new opportunities, asking you to guest in summits, asking you to co-host a workshop, like you said, other things that are coming in there. And then you hit this kind of tipping point where suddenly you are the expert in that. And that's all through consistent visibility work. So it's not necessarily that you can say, oh, I was on this podcast and that brought me in $1,000. That's not necessarily how publicity works. It's much more along the lines of, okay, that helped me build my credibility. Now I'm going to make sure I have this on my website. I have this over here so that people can see. And these are just going to be those building blocks up to helping me become that expert.
Absolutely. So talk to me about extroverts.
Now let's talk about extroverts and introverts. But I would say that half of our clients, I'm sure, would fall into the introvert realm. There's no question about it. You do not have to be an extrovert to be a guest on podcasts. People just think that extroverts like myself are more naturally inclined. Yeah, and Stephanie are more naturally inclined to it because, quite frankly, we like to talk. We like to chat with people. We like to, have those types of conversations. But introverts love to have conversations too, right? They just need to be comfortable. They just need to feel more comfortable in that environment. But they absolutely, want to have those conversations, be out there. And the big thing that I tell my introverts that they're usually so introspective too. They know themselves really, really well, which is amazing quality of introverts. But the thing that I like to say to them is like, what you need to focus on, it's not about you. It is not about you. It is about the value that you're bringing to this audience. And what I always say and what I always preach to any of my clients is when you go into an interview, it is service over self-promotion. And that helps a lot of people in any phase. It doesn't matter if they're an extrovert or introvert. It really helps them to remember that they are bringing value to the audience, that this is for the audience, and it is not about selling themselves.
No, and it's about becoming known, right?
Yes.
And known because you spoke about something that was different or that was inspirational, or you told your story. So I agree. Most of my clients are introverts, which is really funny. When I envisioned building this coaching business, I envisioned all people like me who were just like, rah, 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 rah. But as it turns out, a lot of introverts are attracted to me because they are seeking someone who has that command type of personality, right? Who's going to tell them what to do. Not because they're not super smart and can figure it out on their own, but it's just that piece of their right. And so they are quite resistant to the visibility work. But once they realize how comfortable it can be and how they don't have to talk about themselves, I think that's more of it, right? It's not the idea of talking, it's the idea of talking about themselves.
100%. Yes.
I love 100%.
That. And I will say for anyone that's an introvert, that's, visibility work wise, a really great podcast to listen to as well that'll kind of help you with that is called Quiet Rebels by May-Kay Sang. And that is a great show. She is an introvert. She talks like specifically about introverts getting visible. So that's a really, really cool show that I'll recommend out there.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes. I'd love to listen to it myself. Yeah. Awesome. So what makes this kind of work successful? Like what can people do to be more successful with the interviews that they land or with, some of the opportunities they get to be visible wherever?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple things. The first is be strategic about whose shows you go on. And I think that that's really important because when we start this work, a lot of times people just think they need to get on a bunch of podcasts. Like, I just need to get on whatever podcast I can get on. whoever will have me, like, that's what I want to do. And that's not to say, like, look, if your buddy has a podcast and you want to be on their podcast, be on their podcast. Like, do what you want to do. But when it comes down to where you're spending your time, make sure that you're getting in front of your ideal customers. So make sure that you're getting in front of people that want to hear what you have to say. Don't get hung up on the size of the podcast. It truly does not matter. It really is who is listening to this podcast. I would every single time rather get in front of a podcast that has 100 downloads of my ideal customers than some show with 10,000 downloads of people that don't give a shit about what I have to say. So I think that this is a very, very important thing, is to think strategically about where you are pitching, where you're putting yourself out there, and who you're getting in front of, so that you are making as much conversion as possible. The other thing that I really think is important is building that relationship with the host. So it is a lot of work to put on a podcast. Now, if you don't have your own podcast, I understand that you don't really know that, or, you might think it just seems kind of like, oh, what? I don't know what you mean. They turn on the mic and they talk and then they turn it off and it's done. And it is not that. There is a lot of stuff that goes into it. So first and foremost, I want to come to a podcast interview in a space of gratitude. I'm grateful that Stephanie is letting me get in front of her audience so that I can give them some knowledge and some value over for me. I'm grateful for her for taking this opportunity, all the time, the work that she's going to put into it. And one of the best things that I can do is, and I will do this once we hit end on our interview, is I will thank her, but then I will also ask her, how can I support you? What can I do that is going to help? Do you want me to come in and do a training for your clients? Do you want to do an Instagram live the day that this goes live? What is it that can help you and get in front, provide more value to your audience? And I think that that's also a really, really great way to be getting the most out of the interviews that you do. Our clients have seen such amazing results from doing this at the end of their interviews, from coming from a space of gratitude and how can they genuinely support the host. They've gotten clients that way. They've taught in master classes that way. They've had all these experiences that have come from that. So I think that's a really simple thing that a lot of people miss, is not taking the host and that relationship into account.
I love that. And I love the idea of coming from a place of service. I find that in all of your marketing activities, that is infinitely more successful than coming from, and actually it makes marketing activities feel a lot more approachable and doable for people who are already uncomfortable with the idea of like jazz hands. And they're like, well, I can do that. And it feels really good. And by the way, that's one of the best ways for you to find clients, is to be a helpful human in the world, right?
Yes.
So if I'm out there looking and I want to start, building a podcast strategy for myself, where do I start? Like, where do I find the right shows to start with?
Great question. So my first advice when people are just getting started with this, right? Like, they're like, okay, yeah, I think I do want to be a guest on podcasts. That seems like it makes sense. The first thing that I say is ask your audience what they're listening to. So put it in the bottom of your e-newsletter, put it on social media, just have people hit you up with the shows that they're listening to. Now, of course, you're going to get some shows that make no damn sense at all to what you do. They're going to tell you about their favorite crime drama. I mean, unless maybe you're a detective, then, perhaps that makes sense. But, otherwise, they're going to tell you shows that they just enjoyed listening to. That's all good. It's always good to get suggestions on new shows anyways to enjoy. But you're going to probably get some shows that you didn't know of, that are going to be ones that your ideal customer is listening to. So that's a really great, like, easy, low-hanging fruit way to find out where your customers are already hanging out. The other way that I kind of start doing research, or that I recommend, is to go into Apple podcasts. Well, at least that's where I do my research, and go into Spotify, stuff like that too. Put in the name of someone in your industry that has a similar ideal customer. So we do this with, when we have new clients, we ask them that, like, hey, who are a couple people in your industry that are, have that, they're not competitors. You don't have to be like mad at them, or anything like that, but they have a similar ideal customer to you. And we can go into Apple, we can take a look at the shows that person has been on. And then we know that these hosts are interested in that topic. Now, with that being said, I want to make sure that I'm pitching the hosts of the show that they've been on a different topic, right? So like, let's say there's a competitor in my industry that also does podcast pitching. I put her name into Apple Podcasts, 10 shows pop up that she's been a guest on. I could go into one of those shows and I can find her episode and go like, oh, okay, she talked about how to do podcast pitching. All right, so now I can go to this host and I'll mention that episode. I'll say, hey, I loved your episode with so-and-so. Really loved how you guys talk about how to do podcast pitching. What I'd love to do is come on and tell your audience how to become a great guest, right? Like I can do just a different angle on the same type of thing. And I already know that that host is interested in that topic. So that's a really great place to kind of get started and kind of build up that initial outreach list.
That's awesome. And I think with the other little trick there too is finding people who are adjacent to you in the industry, who serve the same client as you, but maybe have a different, like, you know, my good friend Meg, she's an SEO strategist. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that we have similar clients all the time. And we kind of trade clients. Like I send people to her and she sends people to me, and they like both kind of areas. So where has Meg been?
Yes.
Been featured. And I can just go to her media page and see that. And she can even provide a recommendation to the podcast host if she has a relationship with them.
Fantastic.
Go talk to Stephanie, right?
Mm-hmm. Any kind of connection like that you can put in there. Like if your friend Meg can reach out to them, be like, hey, I had so much fun. Like you said, if they have a relationship, you know, blah, blah, blah. Would love to introduce you to my friend Stephanie. I think she'd be a great guest for your show. And then you go ahead and do the pitch. You then can come in and pitch yourself, right? With topic ideas and stuff like that. But absolutely, having a personal relationship like that is going to be a huge plus.
Okay, so let's talk about pitches, because this is the part where people get really stuck, right?
Yes.
What makes a good pitch?
The fact that you've already listened to their show. Guys, I cannot even tell you. Oh, I know that Stephanie can jump in here and talk about this too, but I would say for most of the friends that I have that are podcast hosts or the podcast hosts that we work with, 9 out of 10 pitches they get are absolute dumpster fire crap. So a lot of people go into it with a spray and pray method, which is what we call it, which is that they send out just a ton of pitches. They're not personalized and they just kind of want to see what happens, right? We kind of do the opposite at Publicity by Christina, and that works really well for us. We listen to a show before we pitch it. We listen to that show. We listen to what that host, we look at the things that they'd like to talk about, and we specifically make some kind of connection there. So in our very first opening sentences, when we send a pitch, we are talking about a recent episode that they've done and something that we found a value out of that. And I cannot even tell you how many hosts write us back because they can actually tell that we've listened to a part of their show or to their show. And I think you can probably attest that just having some kind of personal connection and seeing that someone's actually put the time in makes a huge difference.
Absolutely, it does. And I think any sort of pitch, no matter whether it's for a podcast interview or whatever, if you demonstrate that you are known or that the host is known to you in some way, it just elevates that. Like, I can't tell you how many pitches I get where the people like clearly have no idea who I am. And
or hey, host, comma. Yeah.
Dear
ma'am or sir.
Ma'am.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes the name's even wrong. So I'll tell you
the name. If I could give one thing, I would say take 30 freaking seconds and double check the name of the podcast host, double check the spelling, make sure you got it right, because that happens all the time. And I do not understand.
It's such a simple, yes, I know.
The other thing that I'd say makes a really great pitch is great topic ideas. And I think some people think that they're making the host's life easier by just giving them kind of a few things that they could talk about, right? Like they're like, hey, I'm an expert in branding, social media, whatever. Like, hey, so let me know what you want to talk about and we can chat about that. But in reality, that is not making the host's life easier. That is making them then have to think about, okay, well, what are we actually going to talk about in relate to social media or to branding or whatever? And so you need to be coming correct with 2 to 3 solid topic ideas. And like by that, I mean a couple sentences that are a very specific topic that their audience will be interested in. And that absolutely has made all the difference for us. That's how we've been able to get our clients on amazing shows like this one or big shows that they've gotten on from cold pitches, is by having solid topic ideas.
And I would go one step further and say, be a little disruptive, right? Like I would love
Definitely
to have
can,
someone,
yeah.
I'd love to have someone come on here and say, look, I've got an idea that's completely the antithesis of everything that that's all. I love that.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, you heard it here first. Picture on these types of ideas. Yeah.
but I'm going to tell you something that's totally contrary, because that's how I am, right? Like I like to break down the status quo. I like to tell,
Yes.
I like to give people ideas that are totally different from what they're hearing out there.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes they're like, wait, I have permission to do that. That
Yeah.
feels really good.
Oh,
right?
we should talk about my guarantee then in my business. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like be a little bit disruptive.
Yeah.
And take a risk for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to get on some soapboxes. So I
Oh,
tell
yeah.
you what, that's absolutely a great thing. Hosts, like a lot of hosts are like Stephanie, that they want you to come on and talk about things that their audience is going to be really interested in hearing.
Yeah. Okay. I want to change tack a little bit and talk about your business. So we're here to talk about your business and we're here to talk about your story. But I think what people like and kind of get from these stories is that you're a human being and you're relatable and you're somebody who has gone through the same things that a lot of these people are going through. So talk to me a little bit about the evolution of your offers. So you kind of started with a course and then now what are you offering?
So our main product that we offer is called our podcast pitch broker service. And so what that is we have entrepreneurs in kind of all areas that we work with, and we handle all of their podcast booking. So we do the pitches, we do the follow-up, and we do the actual scheduling for them, so that what they really have to do is listen to the show beforehand, and then what we call show up and shine. So they come on, they drop their knowledge, and then, they have this amazing piece of ongoing content. Of course, we ask them to do the, when it airs, to be sharing that on their channel and tagging the host and stuff like that. But it really eliminates the time that they have to spend doing pitching. So that's what we do. And that's kind of the main service. I also have a VIP day where I train up a team member on how to do pitching. So for some entrepreneurs, that's what they'd prefer, to have someone in-house take that over. So we have that as an option too. And then, like I said, we have just an online training that people can take that are kind of looking to DIY.
Yep. I like it. And are you still running a course?
The training is it's just a 90-minute training. It comes with some bonuses and stuff like that as well. But that's what we have right now. Yeah. I'm trying to keep it pretty simple.
And so you're kind of eating your own dog food, right? Like you're finding clients by doing exactly what you're teaching your clients to do.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. And the fact of the matter is, like, I can teach people how to write pitches all day long. It's a matter of most people just aren't going to go out and do it. So that's why we end up having, and that's for various reasons, time, mindset, all kinds of things. But that's why we will have people come to us that even take our course, or even that do the VIP day. And then we'll come to us down the road and say, like, hey, I know this is important, but I just am not getting it done. So can you guys do it?
You went from kind of a passive business model to more high touch. And that's sort of the opposite of the direction.
What everyone says. Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is like this thing that I teach too, that actually it's easier sometimes for you to do high touch services as opposed to trying to build this passive income stream.
Yeah.
Sometimes Halloween.
Yeah.
But in if you follow the journey of your customer, it's actually really appropriate for you, isn't it?
It is. I kind of fought it for a while. I was like, isn't the whole reason I went into this business like so that, I was able to just kind of scale like a digital product and have that be, what I was doing and everything like that. But that isn't what people necessarily need. There are people that are going to be able to take the direction and run with it. There are people that are going to have that motivation. They're going to get it done. But particularly at the high level entrepreneur that I'm now servicing, they don't. And so what I've done is instead, I just embraced it at a certain point and was like, okay, like we're going to make an agency. Now we have contractors that, I train how to pitch, and they pitch up at the level that I need them to pitch at. They maintain relationships with our clients. This is our white glove service. It is a high touch service. It is, customer service is very important to us. So I'm basically taking everything that I learned before and just applying it in the way that I want to apply it. Like my first job was at Nordstrom. So your girl is like customer service is number one. So I always want to make sure that our clients are being serviced at this really high level. But when I built this business and when I started this business, there are things I did differently. So you were kind of talking about going against the status quo. And the thing that we do that is very controversial in our business is I have a guarantee, a booking guarantee. So for our clients that come to us, we will get them booked on a certain number of shows. And in the PR world, that is very, 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 very uncommon. But for me, how I feel about it is that I am a small business owner as well. And if I am investing this amount of money, I want to know to a certain extent what I'm going to see on the back end. And I don't even necessarily mean an ROI like we talked about. I don't necessarily mean like, oh, I'm going to see this many sales or something like that. But at the end of our 6 months working together, I know that I'm going to be booked on 8 or 12 shows. I know that I'm going to have 8 or 12 solid pieces of content that I'm going to be able to use in perpetuity. And so this is very, very important to me. Me and my team, we bust our butts to make sure that we get our clients booked on the number of shows that they sign up for. And with being clear on that, they have to be what we call aligned shows. So shows that are full of their ideal customer, not just like the first 8 shows I stumble upon in Apple.
That was my question is like, I think one of the common sort of pitfalls with some of the PR people I've worked with in the past is that
Sure.
not really putting you on shows that are super aligned with who you are. It's like, who do I have a relationship where I can easily get you on a show? And some of the shows I would show up for, I'd be like, I don't know what the value is of me being here, right?
Yeah. What is the time worth right here? And that's where that strategy really comes into play. Absolutely. We want to make sure that our clients are on the best shows for them. Now, sometimes, out of those 8 or 12, like there might be 1 or 2 that don't end up being like the conversation maybe didn't go the way that you were hoping it was going to go or things like that. We obviously don't necessarily have control over that. But what I do have control over is making sure that I get you on this certain amount of shows. And so for me, that has been something that is really important. I have never wavered on it and I will never waver on it. You can put it right here. You can write it down. It to me is what keeps us sane and it keeps everyone's expectations at the same level. And for me, that has been hugely important to the success of this business is that at the end of our 6 months working together, everyone knows what this is going to look like. They know how many shows they're going to be on. They're not confused. They're not unsure because what I find from a lot of people that worked with other agencies, and I just mean any agencies in general, is that they feel like they were let down. And I never, ever want that to be the case with us. And so far, so good. More than half of our clients continue on with us. And even the ones that don't, almost all of them are huge referral partners for us.
It's one of the best indications of success is the way you set expectations. I worked for a long time with a lady who holds like really strong boundaries, and she has very, 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 very clear instructions around how you're going to work with her. And you can like it or not like it, but that's how it's going to be. And she never wavers on that. And so you go into the work with her and it's extremely clear how it's going to go. And this has nothing to do with PR, by the way, but in any business, like it's such a great lesson, right? It's in any business, the more you can be clear about expectations, the higher your chance of your customer having a good experience is going to be.
100%. And so that is why I am so steadfast on this. And actually in my own podcast, I just did an episode on this because again, it is controversial and the things that I've seen now they haven't necessarily said it about my business, but I've seen, PR people posting things like huge red flag if someone says they can guarantee you wherever. And for me, it's a huge red flag if you can't tell me at least at all what this is going to look like at the end of our time together. And again, this comes from me working for agencies for well over a decade and having to say to people, oh, I don't know, and hating that feeling. And so when I started this business, I was just like, nah, like we're going to figure out what a realistic number is, what a realistic expectation is over this amount of time. And we've had to grow it over time. It's evolved over time to how long it takes and how many we offer and things like that. So it wasn't as though it came in at this one and it never shifted. That's not the case at all, but it's very important to me.
What I love about being a business owner is you can decide exactly which business
Yes.
to look like. And it doesn't have to be like everyone else's business. It shouldn't be like everyone else's business. And if that's
Nope.
important to you and you want to do it differently, then do it. Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You're gonna attract the right people who are in alignment with that vision.
Exactly. And again, because we're so clear on that, I think that for a lot of clients, they just prefer that over being told how many pitches are going to be sent out or something like that. They know, again, at the end of the day, this is what this is going to look like.
That's right. So what has growth meant to you? Like what does growth look like for you? What are you trying to achieve in terms of growth? And I don't even mean financially. Like growth can be along a lot of different axes in your business.
Yeah. I think that for me, what growth means in this season is getting my business, actually growing my business, bringing on more, podcast publicists and growing this into a boutique agency that is still customer service focused, really still at a high quality level, and figuring out like what exactly that looks like. Are we launching because we do an open cart model for that service. So are we going to be launching 2 or 3 times a year? How many clients are we going to have as our max, or what kind of does that all look like, and still keeping the customer service level that has been part of our hallmark and part of our signature, and why so many people refer us and continue to work with us.
So your growth has been contingent on being able to maintain that value, right?
Yes, 100%. And it's very important to me.
Yes.
Like there's, the things that the relationships truly that we build with our clients is one of the most important aspects for me. And so I just want to figure out how we scale that in a way that makes sense and where our clients are still very, very satisfied.
Awesome. I love it. So I have a question that I ask everyone, because this show is about being real and about, being relatable. What is the one thing that we hear in the business world, in online business? What's the difference between that and what's real?
What is the difference between that and what's real? I would say that people saying that this is I was probably going to ruffle some feathers, but that's fine.
Please do it.
Is that ads are the only thing you need to grow your business and get in front of new people. I don't think that is the only thing that is going to grow your business. What I think is real is a mix of different marketing techniques, which is doing some ads, doing publicity work, doing social media, and figuring out what that mix looks like for you.
Ads are hard.
Yeah. And Stephanie gave me a look when I said that.
I know.
Stephanie gave me a look when I said it.
I have looks. I know. But ads are, listen, I'm just elbows deep in the ads world right now. And like,
and I, for the record, I'm not anti-ad. No, they need to be a part of your marketing and not your only form of marketing.
But they're hard. And I think people hide behind them.
Yes.
And they think they use them as a Hail Mary, right? Like,
yes.
I'm getting really frustrated with my marketing activities. I'm really like, I don't want to go out and be visible. And I'm just going to rely on ads, except that can absolutely backfire.
Yes. And I think also to your point about the other marketing, that can, like publicity work, absolutely, it takes time. And I think people think that about ads. They think, well, I can do this really fast. Like if I just pump some money into the ad machines, I can just do it really fast. And so I think for me, that's one thing that I'm trying to make people more aware of, is the reality is that you kind of have to have these different methods. And again, ads can very well and should very well be a part of your marketing, but they shouldn't be the only thing. And so I think that's why I say that is like, when people just say that that's all you really need to do, that's one thing that really ruffles my feathers, because I also don't think publicity is all you really need to do. Or, I just think that all these things kind of have to work together in order for you to be successful. And it doesn't mean you spend more time. It just means you divide that time between those three.
And they all serve different purposes, right? Like
yes.
I said, the creative work that you do, the content that you create,
mm-hmm.
whatever that format is,
yes,
it's all about strengthening your brand so that when you drag people in from all of your visibility activities, then they can get to know you. That has to be there, right? You can't do that in isolation. And
yes.
neither strategy in isolation is going to really work for you. We do have to have this mix. So I love that.
Yep.
I love that. Okay. Thank you. Christina, we're getting to the end of our time. Tell me what's next for you.
Growing this business, growing it into, the vision that I have for it, and really excitement over getting more voices out there. I cannot tell you how exciting it is for me when we bring on a new client that just has a message to share with the world, and us helping them do that is really an honor and really a big deal. And so being able to figure out how to do that for more people is definitely a big thing for me. And then just in general, I work about 25 hours a week. So making sure that I stay within those boundaries, and, I have a 6-year-old and, stuff like that. So I'm trying to do all this while also maintaining, and that's what I'd say is next for me, is trying to figure out how to make this all work so that, I can have my home life and my business life and be happy in both.
That's why most people are in business. It's not
exactly.
Mm-hmm. It's for the life. It's for the quality of our lives, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. I love it. And I love what you said about a message, because I think that's one of the other things that people have a really hard time with when they're getting into publicity, is identifying what their message really is. And then if that's part of what you're helping them with, there's huge value. Like we talked about earlier, one of the things I've always talked about is slow business. Like that is the antithesis to everything that we hear out in the online world. But what I know from experience is that you have to let your business grow over time. You have to let these things take root, or you're just shooting yourself in the foot, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, a great example of that is your guest you recently had on, Liz Wilcox, but she's a great example of kind of this slow business and having that work into what you want it to be. Like before we started working, so we started working together January of 2021 was when Liz and I started working together to start pitching her onto podcasts. And since then, she has tripled her monthly recurring revenue and all these types of things. And the two things that she does is guests on podcasts, and she does social media. Those are kind of the two areas that she focuses on. She doesn't run any ad, but this has all been over the course of a year. It wasn't something that just happened in 2 months. This is something that happened over the course of the year. And she's now to the point where she's retiring her one-on-one services and going strictly into just working on her membership and digital services.
Yeah.
And that's all. It wasn't something that happened super fast. It was something that happened because of consistent visibility.
And I wish more of my clients would hear that, because it is a relief for them.
Yes.
And B, it's just truth, right? So it means that they can shift their focus from this urgency and this judgment to, just sort of curiosity and consistency. Yeah. Love it. Okay. We're running out of time. So can you tell all of our listeners where they can find you?
Heck yeah. You can come find me by taking the podcast publicity quiz at podcastpublicityquiz.com. Made it super easy for you there. That's a great way to find out what the next best step might be in your publicity journey. And it's a fun video quiz. You get to see this mug. I know you don't get to see this mug right now. You're just hearing me, but it's a fun video ask quiz. It's really, really fun. So that's a great way to get on our list and figure out what's going on there. And then you can also find me on Instagram at publicityxchristina. That's Christina with a CH. The X stands for bi, because I thought I was really clever when I started this business, and it has been the bane of my existence ever since then. But at publicityxchristina is where you can find me on Instagram. I like to post fun stuff that goes on in my life, tips on marketing. I just went off on people paying for podcasts, so you could always listen to stuff like that from me. And we just generally have a really good time.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. So we are out of time. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation. We're going to wrap up this episode. Make sure you go and check out Publicity X Christina and her incredible offer. We'll put all the links in the show notes. Thank you again for being here. If you've enjoyed today's content, I would love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on. This helps us share these stories with an even bigger audience. Until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being real.